Live from London, this is BBC News. I'm Catherine Biaruhanga. As protests continue over the fatal shooting of a nurse by US federal immigration agents, President Trump says there'll be a thorough review. Israel launches an operation to find the body of the last hostage remaining in Gaza, saying it would reopen the Rafah crossing if the mission is successful. More than 1 million households and businesses in the United States are without power because of a huge winter storm.
I'm Sally Bundock. Coming up in business, the rush for safe haven assets as the price of gold hits $5,000 an ounce.
And television celebrates its 100th birthday today, when pioneer John Logie Baird demonstrated TV publicly for the very first time. Hello, welcome to BBC News. A growing number of politicians from President Trump's Republican Party are joining calls for a full investigation following the second fatal shooting this month by US federal immigration agents in Minneapolis. Thousands of people have been marching through the city to protest against the killing. The Trump administration insists Alex Pretty, who was 37, was planning to assault officers. Local officials say that makes no sense because videos of the incident do not show him brandishing a gun. Well, let's get more now from Tom Bateman, who's in Minneapolis, and a warning: you might find some of the scenes in this report distressing.
Mourners have been returning to the spot where Alex Pretty was killed, the second American shot dead by immigration officers in a month in Minneapolis. They lay claim to his legacy in what has become a battle with the Trump administration over both values and narrative. The state's Democrat governor, Tim Walz, appealed to the country to choose.
I've got a question for all of you. What side do you want to be on? The side of an all-powerful federal government that can kill, injure, menace, and kidnap its citizens off the streets? Or on the side of a nurse at the VA hospital who died bearing witness to such government?
But the man now known on the streets for fronting Mr. Trump's deportation drive was doubling down.
I would implore upon any individuals, whether they're anarchists, rioters, or anyone else that thinks it wise to go into a law enforcement scene to disrupt, to delay, is to don't do that.
Several videos show the moments leading up to Mr. Pretty's death. Pushed and pepper sprayed and wrestled to the ground, agents then appeared to disarm him of a handgun, which police say he had a permit to carry, before immigration agents shot him multiple times. Alex Pretty was 37, an intensive care nurse who treated sick military veterans. His family says the administration's version of him is totally untrue.
He cared about people deeply, and he was very upset with what was happening in Minneapolis and throughout the United States.
A call for justice here faces the full counterweight of the Trump administration, accusing a city of inciting an insurrection. Divisions laid bare in blood, and Minneapolis mourns again. Tom Bateman, BBC News, Minnesota.
The BBC's Carl Nasman is also in Minneapolis.
This city now grieving for the second time in just a matter of weeks. You can see behind me, this is the memorial to Alex Pretty. This is the site, of course, where that altercation took place. And throughout the day, we've seen hundreds of people coming here to pay their respects, leave flowers and messages and light candles. This all coming less than 3 weeks after the death of Renee Good. And amid the protests, amid the vigils, there's now a political battle brewing over who's to blame for the chaos in this city. We've heard the Trump administration placing that blame at the feet of local lawmakers. They say they are stoking these protests, encouraging people to block ICE activity here, which is designed, they say, to remove dangerous criminals from the city. On the other hand, officials like Tim Walz, the Democratic governor of the state, blames Donald Trump and his immigration policy. But I do think it's notable that we're now hearing from some high-profile Republican lawmakers, these are senators, now questioning some of these ICE tactics and calling for an independent investigation into this latest shooting One senator putting it very simply that the credibility of ICE is at stake.
Kyle Nasman reporting there. BBC Verify has analysed videos of the shooting from multiple angles, piecing together a detailed picture of what happened. Ros Atkins' report contains footage which again you may find distressing.
The first video we have of Alex Pretty, he's in the road, holding a phone and talking with a federal agent. The officer pushes him and he steps backwards. Kristi Noem is US Homeland Security Secretary. This is her account of why Alex Pretty died.
An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently.
But in this video, as in others, Alex Pretty had nothing in one hand, a phone in the other. We see two people interacting with an agent. We then see an agent push one of those people, then push the second person. Alex Pretty steps between them and the agent and is pepper sprayed. He's wrestled to the ground by a number of agents. He's on his knees, bent over. His hands are on the floor and he's struggling against being held down. One agent repeatedly strikes in the direction of his head. And take note of this agent. He has nothing in his right hand, reaches down and removes what appears to be a gun from Alex Pretty's waistband. Then he steps back, holding the pistol, which appears to match this image shared by the authorities. Carrying this type of gun is legal in Minnesota with a valid permit. The police say they believe Alex Pretty had one. Less than a second after the gun is removed, an agent fires the first shot. As Alex Pretty lies motionless, further shots are fired while agents are standing clear of his body. In total, 10 shots were fired in 5 seconds. In all of these videos, we don't see Alex Pretty holding a gun. But once more, we have seen an American killed in the street by federal agents, followed by the Trump administration making claims about what happened.
And that was the BBC's analysis editor, Ros Atkins there. At least 15 people have died after a passenger ferry sank in the Philippines. More than 300 people have been rescued, but dozens are still missing. An investigation is underway into the cause, but the Coast Guard has confirmed that the boat was not overloaded. Now, more than 1 million households and businesses across the United States are without power as a massive winter storm hits vast areas with dangerously cold conditions. 2 people have died from hypothermia in Louisiana. The southern states of Tennessee, Texas, Mississippi and Louisiana are worse hit, but 140 million people all the way up to Canada are in the storm's path, with 40% of America's population under weather warnings. The National Weather Service says dangerously cold winds and heavy snowfalls of nearly ½ a metre are expected as the bad weather sweeps north. Our reporter Floyd Cush has been braving the elements in Washington.
It's pretty cold at the moment. It is late in the evening here in Washington, and this major storm has been moving across such a large part of the US. It has stopped snowing now, but we saw substantial snowfall. And if you take a little look here at the Capitol, you'll see that it is blanketed in this thick, heavy snow and is now turning to ice. So it looks quite powdery, but actually it is quite thick ice now, and that is what's really concerning authorities here. That can become quite treacherous on the roads, so they're very concerned heading into Monday with the traffic being snarled, and we're seeing exactly the same thing occur in many states across the US. The other really big concern with that ice is ice accumulation on things like power lines and on tree branches, which can then lead to those branches being weighed down and the power lines snapping and breaking. We've seen that already in the south. 1 million homes without power as a result of that. And that is a huge concern for authorities, as the temperatures are also set to plunge, some already freezing temperatures, but plunging down at nighttime temperatures around -20 degrees Celsius in parts of the US. So if you have homes without power, unable to get heating, which many homes in the south don't traditionally have another source of heating, and then have those freezing temperatures, it's a very concerning situation for authorities. The other big piece of this is the travel disruption. We've seen some 12 1,000 flights cancelled over the weekend here in the US, more than 3,000 cancelled on Monday, and we're expecting that disruption to continue. As I mentioned, very difficult to get around on the roads, and authorities are advising people not to travel if they can avoid it. So a lot of disruption and still a lot of danger ahead here in the US from this massive winter storm.
And let's just take a look at some of the live pictures coming into us. This is, of course, the famous Times Square in New York. As we've been hearing, the northern states or eastern states of the US have been faring better in terms of handling the challenges of the severe cold conditions. We also have these pictures coming into us from Arlington, Virginia. Of course, the conditions there treacherous as well. We understand that 12,000 flights have been cancelled in the US over the weekend because of the winter storm. Now, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, has said he is deeply disappointed that he has been barred from standing in the Gorton and Denton by-election, but would give his full support to Labour's candidate. Mr Burnham is seen as a potential leadership rival to the Prime Minister. On Saturday, he confirmed he wanted to stand as Labour's candidate in the by-election, but despite promising to back the government and not undermine it, he's been excluded. The Labour Party said it made the decision to avoid unnecessary costs of running both mayoral and by-election campaigns. Well, let's now speak to our chief political correspondent, Henry Zeffman. And Henry, just how big is the backlash for the Prime Minister in Downing Street following this decision?
It's pretty big, but I don't think it's so overwhelming that they're going to have to change their decision. And I think as far as Sir Keir Starmer and his allies are concerned, that'll be job done, because what they set out to do at the weekend was block Andy Burnham from becoming the Labour candidate and potentially a Labour MP, and that is what they have achieved, and I don't think that's going to change. Quite a demonstration, by the way, of organisational strength, winning the vote on the National Executive Committee panel by 8 votes to 1 to block Andy Burnham. That's pretty significant too. However, critics of the Prime Minister would say all of this really is not about strength, it's about weakness. It is a reflection that were Andy Burnham to become an MP, there would have been, they fear, a pretty good chance that he would have challenged Sir Keir Starmer for the leadership, perhaps as soon as this year, and that he would have won, that he would have displaced Keir Starmer in Downing Street and become Prime Minister. Also worth saying that there is now another possibility, which is that should the Labour Party candidate, who will not be Andy Burnham, lose the Gorton and Denton by-election, I think that would prompt an almighty bout of leadership turbulence, a lot of it fuelled by the fact that Sir Keir Starmer made the call that he didn't want Andy Burnham to be the Labour candidate.
Henry, thank you. That's our chief political correspondent, Henry Zeffman there. Now, Israel has said it will reopen the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza once it's found the last remaining body from the Hamas attacks in October 2023. A search is underway in a cemetery in northern Gaza for Ran Gavili, a 24-year-old police officer who was killed defending a kibbutz. Hamas says it has provided details of his whereabouts. The Israeli government says the reopening of the Rafah crossing would be on a limited basis to allow the passage of people. Well, let's now speak to our Middle East correspondent, Yolande Nell. Yolande, you're joining us from outside the Supreme Court there in Israel. I'm going to ask you about what's happening there. But first of all, just tell us about this operation to recover Ran Gavili's body.
So the Israeli military has said that it is carrying out at the moment this large-scale operation in a cemetery in the northern part of Gaza to try to find the body of the last remaining Israeli hostage. This has been really a key sticking point in recent weeks, because in the first stage of the ceasefire, which came into effect in October, you were supposed to have all of the remaining Israeli hostages, those alive and those dead, handed back to Israel. And you're also supposed to have the Rafah crossing reopening. Of course, the Rafah crossing between the Gaza Strip and Egypt is a really key crossing point for both humanitarian aid made for sick and wounded Gazans to exit. It's also the point where, at the moment, a Palestinian technocratic committee is waiting to enter through. That is supposed to take over the day-to-day administration of Gaza from Hamas. So it's really a key point. But we've had in the past few days two important US envoys, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, meeting the Israeli Prime Minister. The Rafah crossing has been kept closed by Israel recently because it says it wants the return of all of those remaining hostages, including Ran Gavili. Now there's been a bit of a shift in position from the Israeli government. Instead of saying that it will wait for Ran Gavili's body to be returned, it's saying it's waiting for completion of this big operation that's going on in this cemetery to try to find his remains. And we're told in Israeli media reports that there are dental experts there at the scene carrying out this operation to look for this body among dozens that are in the cemetery, along with other experts.
Yolande, we have to let you go. That's Yolande Knell there joining us from outside the Supreme Court in Israel. And she's obviously there following the case. The Israeli Supreme Court is hearing case on whether journalists outside of Gaza can be allowed into the territory to report on the situation. Then, of course, Yolande will bring us more on that story here on BBC News. Now, still to come, a century of entertainment, information and arguing over the remotes. The television turns 100. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Now, here in the UK, the Education Secretary has written to head teachers saying all schools in England should be mobile phone free. Bridget Phillipson's intervention comes after the government issued fresh guidance last week aimed at strengthening existing rules and giving greater clarity. Our education reporter Hayley Clark has more.
Put our phones back onto silent, lock them back in our yonder.
Whether it's in a sealed pouch, a locker or inside a school bag, the vast majority of schools have some kind of smartphone ban in place.
It's going back in.
The idea is that it supports learning, limits distractions and helps friendships. There's been guidance for schools on smartphones for nearly 2 years, with the government saying phones have no place in our schools. But last week, the Department for Education published updated guidance saying all schools should be phone-free. The government wants it to be clear that phones should not be used in lessons for research or as calculators, for example, or outside them, including during breaks. Today, the Education Secretary has written to head teachers saying previous guidance did not deliver the clarity or consistency that schools need. In a letter seen exclusively by BBC News, Bridget Phillipson writes, "This is a clear national reset on mobile phone use in schools," and is calling on parents to back the policies too. For the first time, Ofsted will also examine schools' mobile phone policies and their effectiveness when judging behaviour during inspections. But the government has, once again, stopped short of making the ban law.
I would hope we see this go further, but it's a welcome first step, and what we want to see is further action to help protect young people from the dangers that we're seeing all too often on social media, particularly for young children.
There has been pressure building for months from the Conservatives, unions and parents calling for tougher rules. But some campaigners suggest brick phones, which don't have the internet, or phones that block out social media apps for school hours, could be a better solution. This debate will continue to rumble on, but the Secretary of State will be hoping that today's letter sends a clear message about phones in schools. Hayley Clark, BBC News.
Let's get some of the day's other news. Police officers in England and Wales would spend more time on the streets under sweeping reform plans to be outlined later on Monday. The Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood will pledge to cut red tape and unnecessary admin that she says prevents officers from leaving their stations. She will also promise faster response times for emergencies. Police in Portugal say they have made one of their largest ever seizures of cocaine. They recovered almost 9 tons of the drug with an estimated street value of hundreds of millions of dollars from a semi-submersible vessel off the Azores, which was en route from Latin America. The UK and 9 other European countries are joining forces to provide a new generation of wind farms in the North Sea. For the first time, the turbines will be directly supplying electricity to more than one country using undersea cables known as interconnectors. They will be capable of generating enough power for tens of millions of homes in the UK. The price of gold has hit a record high, surpassing $5,000 an ounce for the first time. The precious metal is seen by investors as a safer option. Last year alone, gold increased in value by more than 60%. Now, 100 years ago, the first ever television pictures were shown to just 50 people. They were demonstrated on a device created by Scottish engineer John Logie Baird, who transmitted live moving grayscale images at his laboratory in London. Before long, the first TV sets were being sold in Selfridges, and the world has never been the same again. Tim Muffet has more.
Frith Street in London, where the man who made television itself possible was honoured this week. It was here that the late John Logie Baird carried out the experiments that gave the world true television.
January 1951, and the 25th anniversary of John Logie Baird's first public demonstration of what he called his televisor.
A real far-fetched realm of science, television. Sending pictures as well as sound by means of radio waves. Oh, what an absurdity.
Although this memorial plaque stands in the heart of London, his real memorial is in the forest of aerials that are springing up over the whole country.
To many, the idea of a forest of aerials ever springing up was far-fetched. John Logie Baird had spent years trying to transmit and receive moving images with a system of spinning discs and light-sensitive cells. In 1924, he managed to televise Stooky Bill, a ventriloquist's dummy. In October 1925, William Tainton, a 20-year-old office worker, became the first person ever to appear on television. 40 years later, he reflected on that very special day.
I was a bit scared of doing it, but he assured me that everything was all right and nothing to worry about. I was squinting my face up and things like that, and moved as much as I was limited, allowed to move without getting burnt with these lamps. Mr. Fair came running round from the receiving end with his arms up in the air and said, "I've seen you, William, I've seen you. I've got television at last, the first true television picture." And you'll find that it had been all the homes throughout the country and, in fact, right throughout the world.
Feeling confident, on January the 26th, 1926, Baird invited a select group of guests to Soho for the first public demonstration. Businessman Oliver Hutchinson was the person televised that day. This is him in the earliest known photograph of a television image, published in June of that year.
Vision and sound are on. The station goes on the air.
A mighty maze of mystic magic rays.
But when the BBC launched its television service in 1936, it chose a different system created by Marconi EMI. Unlike Baird's, it was fully electric, no mechanical spinning discs. Instead, cathode ray tubes converted light into electric signals and back into images. This different technological approach to television was the one that took off and changed the way we saw the world. But the man with the original vision was John Logie Baird, and this was where he first demonstrated it 100 years ago.
Let's remind you of one of our top stories, which is the winter storm affecting many states in the United States. Let's start showing you some live pictures now coming into us from the US. This is Times Square in New York. We understand at the moment that at least 7 people are reported to have died across several states following the cold conditions. Now, this is Arlington in Virginia. The other story we're following is that 12,000 flights have been cancelled over the weekend because of the weather. Well, let's look ahead to business today. Sally Bundock is back in the studio with us. So, Sally, you're going to be talking about a wind farm deal?
Absolutely. A huge event's taking place in Hamburg today, where it's expected that many European leaders will be gathered to sign a new North Sea summit, which will see renewable energy in the form of wind turbines supplying energy to millions of households right across Europe. So it's a big deal for the UK, and many EU economies. We'll be looking at that in detail. Also, breakfast.
Yes. Have you had your breakfast, Sally?
No. Okay. Haven't had time yet, but I do love a good breakfast, and we're going to be hearing from a Michelin star restaurant in London that has started a brand new breakfast menu, and it is mouth-watering, I have to say.
Mouth-watering. Only had porridge this morning with cinnamon.
That's a very good hearty breakfast. The health
Looking forward
experts
to it.
will tell
Thank you, Sally. Stay with us on BBC News.